I keep encountering my birth mom, but she has no idea that I'm her biological child. She had me when she was 14. And I-24 male was given up for adoption. My parents told me about her growing up. I still have the letter she wrote me that she asked if they could give it to me if they wanted. It's crazy reading it sometimes, and knowing it was a literal child who wrote it saying she's sorry she couldn't be my mommy but she hopes I'm happy. She was open to having contact, but we moved from my dad's job when I was 11, and then it seemed impossible to find her. But luckily I did. She's working at this small restaurant and I keep going, but she doesn't know it's me. We talk sometimes. And she seems like a nice lady. Sometime when she says something like, "Do you want a refill, honey?" or uses another term like that, I want to tell her. Why it makes me nervous. We talk sometimes and she seems really genuine. If it's not super busy, she's more open to talking about random stuff. I literally drive 2 hours to come eat at this place just to see her. And it's like she knows me already because I'm there once or 2 times a week for the past 3 months, so she always says hi with a big smile. But man, if only she knew. Comments. Comment 1. As an adoptee, closed adoption, 1970. I love this. My birth mom left a letter for me with the agency when I was 15. She'd just birthed my half-sis. I contacted the agency for non-identifying info at 21, and they sent me the letter. We met soon after. She's been part of my life since. I'm over the moon that this had a happy outcome. Comment 2. This is amazing. Thanks for posting an update. My bio father left when I was 2. He was shitty. Then my stepdad adopted me. Bio dad sold parental rights to adoptive dad who had married my mom. My stepdad died when I was 13. We still talk to bio dad's family. He must have known adoptive dad died BC. He reached out shortly after adoptive dad died. From then on we spoke occasionally, and the first time around he told us he hopes one day we'll be proud enough to call him dad. Turns out it was just a recovery thing. When he returned to drugs he stopped talking to us until I was about 18. After that he'd go in and out of my life. With just an occasional phone call. Or maybe a letter. Never really developed a relationship. He was an addict. Lied non-stop. About 7 years ago we were speaking regularly. He told us he was sick. I naturally didn't believe him. I was supposed to go work in California for a work trip. A few days before the trip, I get a call from a Cali number. Turns out it was a nurse from the hospital telling me if I want to see my bio dad before he died, I needed to get on a plane. So my sister and myself decided to go out there. Was near where I'd be. So I left early. I met him at 6 p.m. the night I left to Cali. His first words to me face to face since I was 2 was, "I was hoping to see you before I fly." I looked just like him. It was overwhelming. We left around 10 p.m. to get sleep. He stopped breathing at 2 a.m. We were next of kin somehow and had to decide to pull the plug. His state and his disease wouldn't get better. He had basically total organ failure from amyloidosis. I saw him for just 3 hours before he died. I had to take care of his remains. I wish we had met sooner and really think people should try and meet their parents who gave them up. It sucks to be where I was. Update. Well, I did it, I told her. And yeah, it was pretty heavy. My heart was even beating fast. I kept trying to think how to tell her. Many of the comments on my last post here mentioned writing her a letter, just how she wrote a letter for me. Originally that was the plan, but for me it felt like I needed to say it. Oh, really quick, I want to say thanks to everyone for their love and support. Mostly to all the birth parents out there who shared their stories with me. That's what really helped push me to have the courage to confront her. It meant so much, so thanks. Everything happened day before yesterday, BDTU. I did wait for her to be done with her shift, and that was when they were closing the restaurant already, and waited in the parking lot. We said hi when she saw me first, but then I told her there was something serious that she needed to know. First told her sorry for keeping it from her this long. She didn't react until I actually pulled out her letter. And she started bawling from there. Like screaming and crying at the same time, and didn't even have to finish the whole "I'm your son" speech. She just saw it, and knew. It was crazy. Next thing I know she's hugging me instantly, but then she pulled back and asked if it's okay to hug me. Of it is. And we're just there hugging and crying in the parking lot. It hit her hard though. Her legs gave out for a second, so I had to actually hold her up while she's still hugging me for a min. What really got me was her saying to me, "Look how big you got." Also hearing her cry made me cry too. She went back to open the restaurant up. She wouldn't take no for an answer. We had coffee, ate a slice of their pie inside, and talked. So many stuff we talked about. She told me the second time I came to the restaurant she got a feeling, but for her it was hard to believe it was me. So that feeling she had was pushed way down. Because she told me for years after I was adopted she saw kids that would be my age and used to think they were me. Then she would be crying in public. It fucked with her mind a lot, and made her depressed, so she didn't want to do the same when she saw me, getting her hopes up like that. She says I look so much like my biological dad when he was younger though. We talked about him too. They stayed in contact with each other in case I ever reached out to one of them, so it would be easier to contact the other. I didn't have hope about finding my biological dad since he was never mentioned, so I'm glad they both planned for this future scenario. She told me about how they wanted to keep me. Especially my biological dad. He didn't want me to be adopted. But he knew they had to, because they were just kids. It took him a long time to get past it after I was born, she told me. That's why he didn't leave anything, because he didn't want to believe he might not see me again. We talked for hours. Till almost 2 in the morning. They closed at 11. She just wanted to know everything about me, but her main thing was, am I happy? Were my parents good to me? Did I have a happy childhood? And I did. I told her thank you for helping to give me this life. We both cried again. She cried the most. Everything was very emotional for her. Sometimes she would look really happy but then get sad again. After my 18th birthday she was hoping I would find her, that's why she stayed in the same city. But since I didn't, she always thought maybe I resented her, wasn't told I'm adopted, or maybe had decided it was better not to have her around. It made me feel bad for not telling her sooner. She told me it's not my fault and I did right going at my own pace. Honestly, she's so sweet. The way she kept looking at me with the biggest smile, it made me emotional sometimes. Makes you think, how can someone who's been a total stranger your whole life look at you with so much love? It's wild. We learned so much about each other. She asked me if we could have dinner soon to keep talking. And if at some point in the future if I'm interested, come over to her house so I can meet her husband. That all sounded really great. We exchanged numbers. After I left she sent a text telling me thank you for giving her this gift that she didn't know if it would ever come. My girlfriend came over and she hugged me while I cried. I wasn't sad, BTT, these were happy tears. Everything went better than I expected. There was still emotionally heavy stuff, but I'm still glad that we got to open up to each other. Now, for the next story. My boyfriend is unwilling to marry me, because I'm an immigrant, and it's been weighing heavily on my heart. I, 29 female, moved to the US 7 years ago, as a grad school student from Indonesia. I met my boyfriend 30 male a few months after I moved, and we've been together ever since. My boyfriend is a US citizen. After I graduated, we had a serious discussion about where our relationship was headed. I made it very clear that I wanted to eventually get married and have children. My BF echoed the sentiments. I remember asking him if he saw that happening with me because I didn't want to be in a relationship with no future. He told me he loved me, and that we were definitely headed in that direction. As of last week, we've been dating for 7 years. We've occasionally talked about marriage, but we were both busy with our respective careers, so the timing didn't seem quite right. However, recently my company announced that there's a chance that my department's work will be outsourced. I'm on an H-1 billion visa temporary worker, so this means that I need to start looking for a job ASAP if I want to continue staying in the US. Last week during our anniversary I brought this up. I asked him if he thought it was the right time to think about getting married, as that will also help with sorting out my visa issues. He looked like he was about to vomit. After much prodding, he confessed that he wasn't planning on us getting married before I was able to get a green card permanent resident in the US. I was incredibly confused because he'd never mentioned this before. His reason was that he didn't want to be used as a visa mule, his words. Not mine by me, and that he wanted to make sure that I married him, because I loved him, and not because it was a ticket to getting to stay in the US, which can only happen when I get a GC. It took me a while to process what he said, and I asked him if he'd be okay to move to Indonesia with me, which he wasn't. I did not react well and ended up leaving because I couldn't deal with what just happened. I am still in disbelief. I started dating him because he was the kindest, most thoughtful, and generous man I'd met. I now feel like I wasted 7 years. While the visa issues are certainly a problem, I did not date him with the intention of making him my safety net. I cannot believe that even after nearly a decade together, he doesn't know what kind of person I am. I feel like this relationship is possibly over and it hurts. It hurts so much. Comments. Comment 1. What he told his friends is probably the PR version. It makes him look better and everyone thinks they're the hero in their own story. I think France would be a great place to work, gives you an opportunity to see the world and find someone who is more progressive and secure about themselves. From what it sounds like, you shouldn't have a problem finding a PR pathway in the EU. Standard of living is on average higher, and also healthcare. Comment 2. So bizarre for me to read this. I work hard and have worked hard for years to support my wife and I. She is an immigrant and has had difficulty finding work, and has instead focused on her art. If fortunes change and her art projects become commercially successful, I would be more than pleased. We married to take care of each other, and here in America I am just better equipped to do that. If we move back to Korea in the future, it will likely be me having difficulty with work and she who is more successful. We are prepared for that. Hopefully the young woman in the original post has a magical time in France. Update. A few days back I made a post about how my BF of 7 years didn't want to marry me, because I was an immigrant on an H1 billion, and he didn't want to be a visa mule. Because the thread got locked and the post was subsequently removed because I have a low karma account, I was unable to respond to anyone. I'm posting this update to do that, plus add in some more things that have transpired since. TL Drive at the bottom. Addressing some of the stuff in the comments. I've been on an H1 billion visa for a bit more than 2 years now. I was on STEM op for about 3 years after grad school. I had terrible luck with the H1 billion lottery, and I got one in the last round I was eligible to apply in. Getting Puerto Rico in the US is not easy. I know people who've been here for 15 years who are still waiting for their PR. For those of you who DM'd me calling me a gold digger, you guys made me LOL. I am aware of the legalities around sponsoring a spouse for a PR, including the financial aspect. It shouldn't have been a problem for the following reasons. 1. I'm a STEM major who recently shifted into management. I work for a large company and I do quite well for myself. My boyfriend is a teacher, and our incomes are not comparable. He earns around $60K, I earn close to $300K. 2. We've been living together for 6 years. We have a shared account to pay for expenses like rent and utilities that we both deposit a percentage of our salary into. The rest of our money goes into our own private accounts, and we don't manage each other's money. 3. Because I'm pretty frugal, I've saved up quite a bit of money in the form of savings investments. If my boyfriend was worried about the legality of sponsoring me financially for 10 years, I would have happily discussed moving the money around. I was even considering buying a house so we could have made that a joint ownership thing. The point is, we could have figured it out. I haven't relied on him financially ever, and I didn't intend on doing that in the future. 4. I might not have considered everything, but you have to note that I thought about the marriage for visa thing very recently, only when the threat of possibly having to leave loomed over me. This isn't something I'd thought about in detail at all. Regarding my situation back home in Indonesia, I come from a very religious and conservative family, and had a horrible childhood. My family doesn't support my career choices. I cut contact with my family when I moved to the US, so they are not in the picture at all. I was on great terms with BF's family, they loved me. Now, for the actual update, he is now my ex-boyfriend. I took a few days to collect myself and then reached out to him wanting to talk. He agreed. It turns out that he has been insecure about earning less than I did for a while. Apparently his friends have been poking fun at our relationship, calling me the sugar mommy, because I take care of most of the expenses. He never told me this until now. He apparently didn't feel like an equal because our pay differs so much, and started feeling that I was only with him as a quick way to get a PR here. I was speechless. I couldn't believe that his friends gaslighted him into doubting our relationship. I reminded him how he had supported me when I was in grad school, like getting me groceries when I had little money to spare, allowing me to stay with him rent-free in my last year of grad school, to help me minimize expenses so I didn't have to take out a loan, letting me use his car when I was attending interviews. I told him that he did them because he loved me and me taking on the majority of household expenses since I started working as my way of paying him back for all the things he did for me back then. He said that he gets what I'm saying, but also that he didn't expect me to start earning more than him straight off the bat. I asked if there was any chance he'd consider going to couples therapy like some of you had suggested, and he declined, because he didn't think he was being unreasonable. He said that he wanted to be the provider in a relationship, and that he didn't feel like one in ours. So there's no going back from this unless I quit my job and found another that paid substantially less, which isn't going to happen. Well, long story short, we broke up. His family is in disbelief. They were hoping that he would propose soon. I've moved into an Airbnb for now. A little bit of good news to end this update with. My company offered me a similar role in a different department. However, this is based out of France, and there's a small decrease in pay. I've always dreamed about living in Europe, and I've accepted this offer. I've signed the relocation agreement, and I'll move there in the next 8 to 12 weeks. Boyfriend was insecure about earning less than me. Boyfriend has now become ex-boyfriend. Company offered a new job in France. leaving us in 2 to 3 months to start a new life in France. Now, for the next story. Oops, dog ate her neighbor's drone, leading to a small claims court case that ironically turns out to be one of the best things for her. Not sure what to do. Earlier today my neighbor came pounding on my door screaming obscenities and shouting at me. When I finally got him to stop yelling, I found out that he was flying his drone in my backyard again, and this time my dog finally managed to catch it and destroy it. He claims this was a $900 drone and I had to pay him right then and there. I refused and closed the door in his face. A couple hours later police showed up to retrieve the drone. It was still in my yard, but my dog completely ignored it once it stopped buzzing and asked about the situation. The said neighbor called them stating that I refused him access to my yard to get it. That's not true, he never asked. I'm worried the neighbor will try to press charges against me for destruction of property or sue me. Will he have any legal standing if this does go to court? He has a history of flying his drone low over my yard to tease my dog. I have asked him to stop several times, which he always refuses, telling me that I don't own the air above my yard. I have called the police to complain once before. He was doing flybys over my dog and getting very close to hitting him. The police didn't say he couldn't fly it in my yard but did ask him to stop doing so in order to avoid conflict. That only seemed to egg him on. Comments. Comment 1. My understanding from my now expired real estate license is that, unless otherwise mentioned in your sale contract deed, local or state regs, so most places in the US you own the air above your property up to the FAA floor, which is something like 1,000 feet up from the top of the building, antennas, etc. So really this guy was inflicting on Oops right of quiet enjoyment or whatever rule applies to homeowners in Oops state, and definitely should have been warned off by the cops sooner. Comment 2. People who fly drones should take courses on them and make sure they have registrations and paperwork filed and follow all applicable laws. Back when I worked for the IRS, someone flew a drone over the Kansas City IRS building. The violators found TIGTA federal law enforcement officers from the Treasury Department knocking on their doors. Drones could record people's social security numbers if they fly by open windows on an IRS campus. This is a security threat and is illegal. Certain areas are no-fly zones, not just airports. Don't try flying a drone over a military base or anything else that might pose a security risk. That's just asking for trouble. And what kind of lowlife uses their drone to harass a neighbor's dog? Sheesh, he must have no life. Update. A small update to my neighbor flying his drone in my backyard and attacking my dog. I was served a summons by a sheriff's deputy. Neighbor decided to take me to small claims over his drone. My mill is a paralegal secretary, so I was able to get a free consultation with a lawyer where she works to ask some questions about what to bring and how to prepare. He seemed genuinely amused that my neighbor was even trying to sue. He also suggested I countersue and how I could possibly add in more damages. He also told me that my neighbor and I technically live within 5 miles of an airport, and even though it doesn't have a tower technically that falls under FAA regulations. I called the hotline from Google and spoke to them about my neighbor's hobby of flying out of line of sight, flying several thousand feet in the air, flying near an airport, and made an inquiry into if he was registered to fly drones. Saying he owned 2 very large drones, he already bought a new one. This one is almost 5 across. I don't know the weight of his, but it definitely is at least a few pounds. They took my information and have called me back once, so I know they're investigating but don't know anything else. Not sure if they'll tell me anything anyways. I brought both police reports to court, as well as several photos of my backyard, photos of our shared 8-high privacy fence, medical bills for my dog, and a few short videos I had of him doing flybys over my dog in the past. His main argument to the judge was that I maliciously installed a table to allow my dog to jump high enough to catch his drone, which I somehow trained him to do. Which, yes, I had recently bought a new picnic table, but only so I have somewhere to sit and eat outside. I argued that his flying was causing my dog anxiety and that's what provoked it, and thanks to Wyall's advice, that my dog could have potentially died from ingesting part of the drone, or if the drone hit him. In the end, he now has to pay me just under $2,000 for various vet bills, x-rays, dental exams, sedation, medication, etc. He is also banned from flying over my property, and I installed trail cams front and backyards just in case. He seems pretty upset with me, so I wanted to be careful. The only thing that could make this better is if the FAA finds a reason to fine him or take away his drones.